Good morning, everyone. Session with Ryan. We've got a really good one for you all with lots of content to get through today. So it should be a really interesting and jam-packed hour for you all. Just before we begin, as always, some small housekeeping notes. If you could please just remain on mute throughout the presentation, that would be great. But if you please do have a question, please feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your hand. We really love to have the engagement from you guys throughout these sessions, so we can just make sure they're as valuable as possible for you all. So that's all from me today. So please take it away, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Alice. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. So my name's Ryan Darby. I am part of the vision team here at Sensei. We've got a few other team members on the call as well. We're going to talk about where work comes from. Work doesn't magically appear, or actually sometimes it does, and that's part of the problem. We're going to talk about how we get through that pipeline of the work, sort of from this vague idea in the back of someone's brain through to actually something that physically gets created. And how you make sure you are not only doing the right work, but efficiently and in a very, useful way, selecting the right work as you go along. So there are a few takeaways besides, have a great weekend is one. But what I want you to do is think about this. As you implement this pipeline process, you need to think quite widely. If you don't have top-down, big picture executive support, you're essentially running forward fast with a blindfold on. So you need to actually have people that are looking out for you there. As we go through it, we are going to talk a lot about process. This is not a sales demo type of thing. I will show some screens and things to give you some context. But the point is, process is hard. Tool is easy. The tool is an enabler. We will elaborate on that. A tool such as Sensei IQ, that obviously it's our tool, so I'm going to show you some of that. It's all about letting you see into the future, and you need to think about what your future needs to be. Now, to do that, it's a journey. You are going to have to take it step by step as you go forward. These things generally start with Excel, but they end up in amazing places, but you can't do it all on day one. The last takeaway is, it can be hard to do. It's hard to get the organization's head around why we want a pipeline and why we want to get some process in place. You're going to be fighting people above you, and we'll elaborate. I'll give you a little story about this later on, but don't feel alone and pick your battles. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to talk about why this pipeline, why do we even want to bother? Because it sounds like a whole lot of work. We're going to talk about what it means when someone says, hey, we need to do something about the pipeline here. I need visibility. What does that actually mean? We're going to also then look at pieces of that pipeline. We're going to look top down and left to right. So it's from strategy all the way down to work, but also from idea to proposal to the work. And we're going to look at some examples of these, but mainly we're going to talk about what you should consider, what the pitfalls are, what the traps are, as you try and implement all of these things. And as I go, I can't see you at all, so I can't see anyone if they raise their hand, so she will deal with any questions, but feel free to put questions into the chat, and at an appropriate moment, Alice interrupt, and we can go through those. Okay, so let's start off by looking at what the problem is. Like, why are we even bothering to solve this thing? Now, the problem is where does work come from? So we're going to start with a poll that asks you where that work is. There are a few polls through this, not so many that you're going to flatten your phone battery, but enough to keep you interested and actually to see how we as a group, or all of you as a group, are doing. So Alice is going to make the poll live, which I think she's now done. Okay, now let's see as the results come in. Okay, so far, I'm looking to the slide here because it's on my phone. So far, the majority, 35%, this is actually very impressive, are getting their work coming down from a strategic plan, and they're refining that every year. Coming up behind them, 25% is people planning it out every financial year, but not necessarily part of a very long-term plan. That is actually very impressive. Oh, it's shifting a bit. About a fifth of you are saying that someone identifies a problem and just gets it approved, so more ad hoc. And then 8% are someone identifies a problem and we just kind of decide ourselves to actually do this. And then 18%, so fifth, yeah, this is the one I was looking for. I thought this would be higher, to tell the truth, is that someone makes a lot of noise and the squeaky wheel gets the grease and we just react to that. Okay, so I was a little surprised. So there's obviously a lot more strategic thinking going on here, which may just be, look, we have a lot of enterprise clients. A lot of you will come from large organizations. It may be part of that, but it gives me a nice warm feeling to know that there's actually a bit of, maturity out there. Okay, now, so you've got this work that's come in. The whole point is, and those of you who voted for it as part of a long-term strategic plan, it's really about doing the right work. Because doing the work right is more what the projects are doing themselves, but should they be doing their work in the first place? That's kind of what we're talking about here. Okay, so another poll. Now, it'll be interesting how this one works out. So you are getting work in based on what you've just voted for. But what's the implication of that? Yeah, does the way you operate now work for you, or does it not? Are you finding that you can deal with work as it comes in? Are you struggling? You're not clear on what you're supposed to do next? Are you churning priorities? Okay, so let's see how these come in. Okay, so 13% are saying they're agile enough to deal with it as it comes up. That's interesting. 35%, this is kind of what I expected, is saying it's unclear if we're actually achieving what we should be. That's the whole point. It's about running forward with that blindfold on. You're very busy, but you don't know if you actually should be doing it. That's come up to 45% now. We've got 14% and 14% saying people are changing priorities and we can't forecast resource demand, and 10% are saying costs are all over the place. So basically a clear winner here with 41% now is that it's unclear if we're actually achieving what we should be. And I think this is a classic. Went exactly the way I thought it was, except a fifth of you are saying you're agile enough to kind of roll with it. But a little bit surprised by that, but also heartened by that as well. It shows, that a lot of organizations have obviously got things under control and can pivot as they need to. Now, the thing is, though, if 42% of you are saying that it's unclear if you're actually achieving what you should be, but about 40% of you are also saying that you're getting work coming down strategically from the top, it starts making me wonder if that somewhere, either from the top down or from left to right, the horizontal, from the idea through the proposal or business case through to the project, the prioritization, if there's something not quite aligned over there. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this as we go. I'll give you a break from the polls for a little while. Okay, so the reason we need to think about this pipeline, and I'm going to have, as I go through this, I'm going to develop a fairly holistic definition of what a pipeline is. It may be a bit more than what some of you were thinking of. The reason is because 41% of you, or 42% are just seeing it's ended up, or unclear if you are achieving what you're supposed to be doing. So that, to me, is enough reason to look closer at the process before project starts. So a little bit of a model that we use as to why should you think about this at all? And it ties into that 42%. The first one is the point. What is the point? What's the reason for the work you're doing? Is there a reason? Are you getting what you're supposed to be getting? The second is yes, if the reason is because enough managers made a lot of noise, is it actually the right mix of work? So are you evenly or in a planned way contributing to your strategic goals? Now, let's say that there's a point to doing the work and you are happy enough with how you're contributing towards your goals. How's it going? Have you got a lumpy resource pipeline, which most people have? If you have got your resources figured out, have you got holes in the finances? So are you spending too little, which is a very common thing. I never thought I would grow up to say that it's a problem to not spend enough, but if you're not spending, you're not achieving either. So this is a very common problem we have with clients. Or are you, on the other hand, spending too much, which probably means that you're not getting to the other work you thought you'd be doing. Next one is, and I'm going to elaborate on this a little further, it's around happiness. So if you were doing the right work and you're doing it in the right way, even if people aren't doing it quite in the right way, but they know they're doing the right work, they're going to feel happy. They're going to see the value in what they're doing. And if they're happy, they'll work better everyone just wins. And then lastly, if you don't actually understand what's in your pipeline, you can't be agile. So those of you actually in the first poll said that, well, we were agile enough to be able to sort of pivot around and roll with it as the priorities change. That's great, but what that implies is that you can actually see enough of what's important. There's kind of a difference between blindly reacting and doing what's in front of you versus reacting, being agile around something that's worth doing. Okay, so this is how we look at why we need to think about the pipeline. Now, if we boil all that down and we start thinking from a system point of view, it really comes down to this. Can you, hand on heart, say to your executives, or can your executive say to the next level up, if there is one, that we actually trust this data that we're getting? I'm prepared to bet not only the company's money, but my own salary on the fact that we are making the right choices in terms of this work and that we've got the prioritization correct. To do that, you need to make sure you've got a single source of truth. You need to, as you try to create that single source of truth, save yourself some time. Generally, this is kind of a Ryan heuristic, is that the PMOs involved in gathering all this pipeline related data spend about a week a month working on this data for a report. They then get about an hour or two to actually analyze that data. So you need to really reduce the double handling, the manual effort, all the Excel. That will save you that time on reporting. It will make sure everything is actually consistent, and this will flatten out your resources, flatten out your spend, and make any of the underspend or not achieving value become very visible. Okay, so I told you I would be defining pipeline in a fairly holistic way. So there are two ways that are very interrelated but can be dealt with separately. The first is what we've actually been sort of alluding to is top-down. This is creating a vertical cascade of strategy, coming down to strategically, these are the themes, these are the goals we want to achieve, we will get these benefits from it, we're coming across into how we're going to actually do it, down into the works, projects, but now we start running into the linear process. The horizontal funnel coming left to right, which starts off with, well, strategically we need to do these things, but maybe we do or maybe we don't define out the project strategically. Maybe we start with gathering ideas, and then we go through a business case, we select and prioritize, and then we go on and deliver, okay? You need to be able to think about both, but you don't have to solve both of these problems at once. Let's not boil the ocean here. Solve one of these and then tackle the other one later. If you can do both at the same time, and a tool like Sensei IQ will coincidentally let you do that, but don't completely overwhelm yourself trying to solve it. So the model we have is that if you have solved everything, you have strategically, you have high maturity, and you have your selection tool, so your pipeline process already, your work is in a suitcase, packed up, ready to go. You've got to pick it up, go forth and deliver. You're in a beautiful company. I want to work for you, okay? Well, actually, no, I don't, because I like my company, but you know what I mean. Well, let's say that strategically you're doing pretty well, as in you know what your strategy is, but it's not being converted across into the work itself. So you don't have any sort of horizontal way, any linear process to define your ideas, your business cases, select them, etc. Well, you have a need for some tooling in that case. You've actually got, it's not a bad position to be in because you've got strategic backing. The organization knows what it needs to do. It's just got to work out how to do it. If you do not have your strategy in place, but you do have a good linear process in place, you probably are fighting thunderstorms. You are most likely going to have all this data and this level of frustration that people won't quite believe it because strategically they just go off and do something else anyway, okay? So you've got a bit of an uphill battle over there. If you have neither in place, well, you actually need a life preserver. That's what that little picture is. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how some ideas around how we can get the pipeline, so slightly different definition, but it is pipeline from the top down strategically, as well as the horizontal going from the left to the right. Now, as you do it, you will end up with tools in place. And this is essentially, what you're looking at here is Sensei IQ. We have the top down, looking at our strategic execution, our themes, our goals, broken down to benefits, projects, then coming from the left to the right, or work coming from the left to the right, being selected, being prioritized, and being delivered. But I told you this isn't actually really about Sensei IQ, but you may say, well, there's a picture on the screen, just give me that, and then we're done. You know, what's the problem, okay? So what is the problem? So I'm saying you need to implement something like that. So the problem is that the theory is great. And the theory is that those on high come up with strategic goals. They communicate these down into high-level initiatives, think programs or portfolios and programs. These are broken down into how we're going to deliver that work, which could be projects, work, initiatives, little BAU, etc. All the people down here start to execute this work. It gets governed, and now the theory is great again. They start reporting up. As they report up, the management and the executives are able to actually track the progress, determine if these are successful, and determine if we're actually achieving our strategic goals. What could be simpler than that? Well, the problem is that there is a gap in the strategic gap from strategy to execution. That chasm there is about how do I actually make sure that all these bright ideas from the top and from the left to the right are converted down into work and are then related back to our strategic goals. Because it's over here where you get teams working very, very hard. I've never met someone who doesn't work really hard at their job. That's the thing. But are they running forward with that blindfold on? Okay. The reason they're running forward with that blindfold is because they can't trust their data. They have too much difficulty in gathering that data and actually administering the projects to actually get measurement coming back. Ultimately, it's about that evidence. When you start asking people to measure, very often you start thinking about, well, I want a really complicated schedule in place and I want all this detail because this is hardcore project management stuff. But the problem is most people in the world are not hardcore project managers. They're citizen project managers, they're accidental project managers. So you need to be able to incorporate them as well. They may also be working with different methodologies. So it can be a little bit messy out there, okay? So what you ultimately need is process and then tool to tie all this together. So this talks about the top-down problem. So if we think of pipeline as starting with strategy, working its way down, that's one part of the definition. But the other part of the definition is going left to right, that horizontal process. And this is about those selection tools. So looking at an idea, looking at a proposal or a business case, and then looking at the demand coming out of it. Because ultimately, if you do all of this, yes, you are going to be doing the right work, but you're going to be able to get more tangible, direct, as in today benefits, in that I can just see what my demand is going forward. People usually think about this in terms of resourcing, but it's going to mean you spend less time chasing up reports and manually creating things and less time in Excel. Okay. So we're going to have a little look at this. So I've given you a whole lot of theory. And to make sure there's a point to all that theory, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of what it could look like if you actually have some of this in place, okay? Let me change my screen. Any of you who are looking at me on the camera will see I'm looking off to the left here. I've got a script typed out, so I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't get lost. Okay, so we are, first of all, remember it's about the pipeline. So here we have the pipeline. So we want to have that visibility. So I can see we have a lumpy pipeline. There's a lot going on in planning. There's a lot in initiation. The execution people better hurry up because it's like a snake that swallowed something huge. It's about to come through and they're going to get flooded over here, okay, or swamped. So the whole point is we can actually make this pipeline visible. We have data we can trust and we can start making decisions against this. So that on its own is a great thing to start with. Let's go down a little deeper. Let's look at where this pipeline data comes from. Remember, it starts with an idea, it goes all the way through to executing and closing off a project. In the beginning, so now we're talking the left to right here. We're looking specifically at the horizontal funnel going across. We need to be able to see what ideas are coming in, what these ideas are worth in terms of, are they risky? Are they good ideas? Are they bad ideas? Can we govern them? Where are they? So it's like having a list of ideas in a spreadsheet is one thing, but were they submitted? Have they been reviewed? Have I communicated back to someone to say, hey, you know what? That idea you gave us 3 months ago, I haven't forgotten you. It's nothing as terrible as having really keen staff come up with ideas that go into a black hole, just into the void, okay? So you need to close that loop. We'll talk about that a little bit later. As all the work starts coming through, we are able to start seeing timelines of everything as it actually happens, okay? So we can start seeing just how busy everything actually is. Should we be continuing as we're going, or are we going to end up getting just too busy? As we get busier and busier, we need to think about what's the priority? You know, are we doing too much? I will be coming back to a lot of these slides in more detail. So what we need to think about is, what's the priority of the work? Is it contributing to our strategic goals? So as in, is there a point in doing it? Am I doing it in the right sequence? And am I getting something back for it? Okay. That's why to do this, you need to think about not just the top down, but the left to right as well. And then, because everyone always asks about resourcing, and we'll come back to these, just giving a little, kind of sneak peek as we go. Ultimately, someone's looking at this thinking, you know what, this is great, but this is for the big bosses to worry about. I just need to know if we've got enough people. Well, once you start building up the pipeline, you can start seeing what that demand is. So we can see our capacity, we can see the demand, and we can see based on this particular data, yes, we can take on a whole lot more work, okay? Now I'm going to come back to all that. What I wanted to do there was just show you how good life can actually be if you get some of this right. So I've got an example of it working for me. That's no problem. What's stopping it working for you? So we're going to have a little poll again to see what is actually stopping all of this theory I've spoken about succeeding, or what do you think will stop it succeeding in your organization? Okay, so we've got a few things. Oh, this is interesting. So no formal decision-making or prioritization process. That's a third of the people. 10% are saying executive buy-in lacking. That's interesting. I thought that'd be higher. A fifth of you are saying we have no single, a quarter now saying no single list of what we're actually doing. A fifth of you are saying there's no solution to support us. Sensei, I can help you with that. And 15% are saying despite trying, it all just changes anyway, which is actually a really sad thing. Okay, so votes seem to be slowing down a little bit. So essentially a third have said, 33%, no formal decision-making or prioritization process. 10% of you actually saying, only 10% are saying it's a lack of executive buy-in, which is very good because you're going to need some of that. Okay, and then a fifth of you are talking about needing a tool. So now that we've understood a little bit about what could be getting in our way, let's talk about the process and the things we need to think about to actually implement this pipeline, to get we want some of that good stuff. We want some of those reports. Let's look at what we need to think about, and then we're going to look a bit more detailed at how we go through it all. So the very first thing, and I've kind of alluded to this as we go, it's about the people, it's about the process. The tool is just an enabler. These are just tools at the end of the day. If you can get that process figured out, as now 32% of you have said you need process, you can get the right people backing you, and you can get the people in your process, as 12% of you have said, well, look, we need that executive buy-in. This means that the people, you've won the hearts and minds. They will then use that enabler, and you will get those reports coming off it, which will save you all that time, which makes people happier. They'll use it even more. So it becomes a circle. But it starts with the people and the process. Now, this is a quote from me. The pipeline can be done in a spreadsheet. You can do anything in a spreadsheet. Let's all be honest. Excel is the greatest tool in the world for anything. but it will only actually work and be respected if the people in the process have been figured out and are behind it. So how do you do this? Well, it's usually a little bit backwards. Now, it's interesting that based on the fact that only 12% of you are complaining about lack of executive buy-in, my model here may be a little bit reversed. But generally, people start getting excited by install a tool. I need a tool. Give me the tool now. Like, yeah, cool, sure, we'll give you a tool. But do you have executive buy-in, or do you have your strategic goals figured out? As I go through the slides, I'm going to talk about what that really means. It doesn't mean that you need to have hardcore, mature strategic management in place. Okay, you can do it a little bit to start with. You've then got to get your process. Once you've got the process and you've got a reason for the process and you've got people backing it, you then start gathering your data. And this may mean that you're using Excel. And then you look at getting a full enabler in place. If you work through those levels, it gives us a 4-step process. Now, that 4-step process really starts with agreeing on what we want to see. Remember, it's about, can I trust that data? Can I make decisions on that data? Because I'm making decisions based on where we spend our time and our money and what the people doing the work are actually doing. This impacts what the value we get back. So first of all, agree on the source of truth and what data you want to see. Get executive buy-in on that. Because if they don't care about that slideshow you show them once a month or that Excel you give them, you're just treading water. There's no real point. Then map out the process as to how you're going to get this. Remember, it's a process first, not a technology. You're going to have to measure. The 1 and 3 are related. You're going to have to measure as you go along. It's got to be evidence-based. So can we prove that we have got the work in, we've prioritized it properly, we've made the right decisions, and when someone comes along and in a very reactive way, it's like, no, I'm the shouting loud person, and I want you to do my work, you can say, no, look at it. Based on the prioritization, you were number 42 in the list, okay? And, okay, sorry, I skipped one. Do it, sorry, the last one. Do it step by step. All of the stuff I'm doing, I'm giving you the complete model here. You don't have to do it all at once. Start simple. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about something that can go wrong. This is actually from probably about a decade ago. It is that isn't quite right. It's a little story that I went through. Myself and someone else were in our Sydney office, and we were called to a client, and we had 2 guys in the room. And this is basically what happened. They said, well, we've got a board meeting next week. We've sold these people on the idea of a pipeline of being able to show that we're doing the right work strategically and that we can prioritize the work. So we need your tool. We saw on your website, you've got a tool. And we're like, cool, no problem. We do have a tool. Let's actually look at what you do. Let's look at your process. They're like, no. We don't want process. That's why we want the tool. You give us the tool, that'll tell us what the process is. In a way, that's true, but it's like, yeah, the tool helps you. It doesn't do everything for you. So the client says, well, have you got a process for us? I'm like, well, I don't have one in my back pocket, but I can help you with one. We're going to have to talk to some executives. And by the way, when's this meeting? It's like, no, it's next week. I'm like, well, this will probably take you don't even have a purchase order yet, let alone anything else. It's probably going to take us a bit longer than a few days. And they actually said, it's like, no, you don't understand what we need to do here. We've got to present the answer. We don't really care about the solution. We just want your tool to give us that answer. We don't have anything to feed into the tool. And it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, okay? Sad story, but true story. You need to focus on the process, get it right, get the executive buy-in to go along the journey. They've got to believe in the process. So as you start doing this, you're going to have to do some work. First of all, you are going to need to define those strategic goals. Again, this doesn't have to be done in all the levels of fanciness. If all you say is, we have strategic goals, I can show them that usually companies have them printed on a poster on the wall or on a website. Hey, we've got those, and in some rough way, we can align ourselves to them. Even if that way is the big boss in the corner office there, that big boss said, this project is related to that goal. That's fine, as long as someone made a call. If we can do it more scientifically, that's even better. That's why we have, tools like ours. We need to agree on how we're going to do prioritization, because just because you've got strategic goals, you can have all this work flooding in, how are you going to prioritize it and get people to agree to that prioritization? You're then going to have to get that work to come in to prioritized. So how are you physically going to capture the ideas and the proposals? We will look at that in a little while in terms of how we do it. You may have other ways. You know, people use spreadsheets, they use SharePoint, etc. Makes life difficult to report on, but it's a start. And then it can't be the black hole. It can't go into the void. So we need to look at that loop coming back. People are making decisions. I can see what decisions they've made, and I can see there's a point to it. And I can see how how my work's progressing, and am I doing the work that was prioritized and relates to strategy. So as I've said, it is a maturity journey. Okay, you don't have to do it all at once. If all you do is start off by getting that single source of truth in place. So quite a few of you in the poll were talking about no single source of input for all these ideas coming in. Just solve that one. You're actually ahead of most people. Find a way to prioritize. We're going to look at models on how to do that in a second. Make that maybe rough way more formal and actually have it measure-based and make it repeatable. Then start widening this out. You don't need to boil the ocean. You don't have to get everything in the organization feeding through the process on day one. Just do it for one department. Yes, I know from a strategic perspective, that's not quite right, because what about the other 90% of the company? But if you prove your process right, they will like it, it will spread out. Then think about, well, we can tackle this either horizontally or vertically, or a little bit of both, or we could do one, then the other. Okay, it's a journey. Yeah, so as you're going through it, so you choose that you are going to undertake this journey. There are a few gotchas here, and this I speak from experience. Have implemented this with our company, but actually working as in working for a client company, trying to do this, and I have the scars on my back as a result. So let me tell you a few of these things. The first one is that heroes die young. If you are a PMO manager, and I suspect there are a few of you on the call that are PMO managers and have done what I've done, you have this bright idea that we need a pipeline and we need to prioritize and we need input from the executives as to strategically what is important. Well, you are going to have to convince the people above you that this is a good idea. You're going to have to convince the people below you that this is a good idea. You are stuck in the middle, okay? And it's you against all odds. So you have to be very careful that you don't push this so hard that they're just like, nah, look, can't deal with this. We'll just tell you what to do, okay? Don't get yourself wiped out in the process is what that means. You've got to make sure you get that buy-in from all sides, even before you start building massive spreadsheets and processes. You have to watch out for rogues, people on the side making a lot of noise and just spewing all this crap out, who are not following your process and are going to just inject their priorities in there and change the work that everyone is trying to do. Again, it comes back to that executive buy-in who can keep these people under control. As you go through, you could get tempted to really build that spreadsheet and make it so complicated. And then you'll spend a month of building reports that we want to save you. Well, you'll spend that just working on your complicated spreadsheet. So don't drown in too much data. Very often, just everyone agreeing on what the priorities are is a better outcome than no one agreeing on tab after tab of Excel. You do need a process. In some form, you need a process people actually agree to. When we interact, when we first engage with clients, we usually get them to explain their process. And I really find it evilly amusing that they're all like, yeah, we're a mature company, we've got a process. I'm like, fine, draw it on the whiteboard. And then you've got 10 people in the room and no one can agree on what the process is. And it's sad but funny, okay? So you need to get the process figured out. Once you've got that process figured out and you start bringing a tool in, the next gotcha is don't overdo the amount of hierarchy and approvals. Keep your workflow simple. A lot of people define out this, we want this person to view it and endorse it, and this one's going to approve it, and then it's going to move to their boss to approve it. That all gets really hard. If you try and take a mess and you automate it, you get a very efficiently automated mess. So keep it simple to start with. Okay, now story time. Remember I spoke to you about heroes die young, okay? That bright-eyed PMO manager, that was me, okay? I will I will disclose that. So basically what happened is, where's the PMO? I'm managing this PMO. We are trying to bring in strategic planning and prioritization. We go to the executives and we start pitching this idea to them. And they were like, yeah, look, we'll do whatever you want. We'll support you. It's fine. Then we go and develop our process and our model, and we work out what they should be doing, and we present this, and they're immediately like, yeah, no, that isn't actually what we need. These are the priorities. These are the projects that we need. And the data doesn't support that. Like, no, but that's what we need. So we go and we rebuild the model, and now we need to get more input from them. And we get this attitude of, look, I'm kind of busy right now. I need to just find, this PMO manager's on my back. Let me just do some stuff for him. I've got to put some data into his model. We keep pushing them for it. And then we find out, well, no, hey, we as the execs, we got together, we've decided this is what it is, this is what the year is. You just go forth and, deliver this. It's like, what's the whole point? So what we have here going wrong is not actually getting the buy-in to the process and the idea, which is important, because ultimately it's those executives making decisions. They need to be able to trust that data. But if they're not recognizing your fancy system or your spreadsheet or your process, then they're not going to trust that data. Okay, now, if you get them on board, you've got everyone on board, everyone's lined up, you're getting your process figured out, Sensei is working with you and putting this tool in, you've got some prep work to do. So first thing is, get our strategic goals in place. We need a way to capture ideas in our proposals and then evaluate those proposals and prioritize them. And we need a way to actually have that single resource pool and a way to look at the demand that's actually coming. And we're going to be looking at this in a second, right now, in fact. So let's look at this from the top down, from the strategic goals perspective. So what we want is to have the ability to have a big picture theme. So let's say we want to become a leading organization in this industry. To do that, we have two goals. We've defined our two strategic goals. We need to get them by April and July in 2 years' time. And we need to be able to then break that down further. And this is where we start coming to bridging that strategy execution gap. Like, okay, we want these goals. If we get these goals, what benefits are we going to get? So how we get, so we can now start coming across to the benefits, which comes into how we're going to execute the work. We can then start tracking how we're actually doing. Are we achieving what we should be doing? But how do we really know what we should be doing? This is about those goals. It's about defining those goals. So what you're looking at here is obviously it's Sensei IQ, or the strategy IQ part of that. We have defined out the goals themselves. Now, remember I said it's about evidence. Ultimately, you're going to need to be able to prove that you are contributing towards these goals, or what you want to do will contribute towards these goals. So we create a rating. So here we have said, well, from a low perspective, I have a low contribution to this. We want international students to come onto our campus. We want up to 100 of these students to come on. But if it was medium, we'd have up to 1,000. I think that should be 10,000. Everything is clear cut, okay? If we have it clear cut, what it's ultimately going to give us is what you saw before, is that prioritization. So we can prioritize, but I'm going to talk about that in a little while. What we can see is how we align to those strategic goals. So is the high priority work giving us what we need from a goals perspective? Now, if you like that, say, okay, let's do it. So what do we need to prepare? First of all, you need some goals. So can you get some goals? So you need agreement among everyone as to what those goals are. But it doesn't have to be enterprise-wide completely. It is possible that you just do this within the department. You've then got to think about a way to actually reference those goals and align work to them, which we're going to look at in the next piece. And this needs to be consistent, but it can be informal. Even if it's interesting, I had a discussion with a client yesterday who said, all they actually want is to be told what to do. So if they're struggling to get this process in place, if they have an executive who says, Strategically, this is what we need to be doing. Go and do these things. I'm telling you, one person making the call, that's consistent. It's not very kind of informal consistency, but it is consistent. Next step is get that into a system and make it, properly consistent. And then as you go on, I keep rabbiting on about this, do people respect what you're doing? It needs to have buy-in. Buy-in's hard. That's why, you know what, if you can't get strategy down to work, go left to right. Get the horizontal piece to work. Usually that actually makes more sense to people because they're like, I've got work, I can prioritize it. That at least is making sure we are doing the right work, or at least we're doing the work in a way that, in an order that is right, even if it's not perfectly the right list yet. Okay, so if we do choose to do it left to right, so say, okay, we're not going to tackle the strategic piece now, or maybe we are, but we will do it, we will do, a little bit of both. Let's start with getting some ideas in place. Now, here's Excel. I'm going to go back to the system in a minute. As I said, Excel is the greatest tool in the world. Okay, it's hard to beat Excel. Interestingly, these days, we can integrate Excel into something like Sensei IQ, giving the ability to work in Excel, but your data is updated in Sensei IQ. So you have very nice ways of integrating all these Microsoft tools together, but at least they're all integrated together. Standalone Excel, look, if you need to start there, start there. It's a good place to start by defining out your prioritization, but then let's get it into a tool to make sure everyone is using the same version and you can actually report on this. What that then gives us is our funnel. So we come back to actually having our funnel, okay? So the whole point to this funnel is I can see ideas. Ideas are moving through a life cycle. So here we have these ideas in identify stage. We can start seeing what they're going to cost. They don't have benefits yet. But if I come down, I start thinking, well, it's made it through as an idea. It's now a proposal. So think like a business case. Now I'm starting to see what the real cost is. I'm starting to see what the benefit is. I'm starting to see how much effort's going to be involved and what I'm going to be getting back. I have now got data that I can prioritize. We'll look at that in a second. And eventually it will become a project or piece of work and it will be delivered and we start achieving those benefits. To do that, we have a place to go. This is one of the things we need. Where are you going to put those ideas? Here we have a central single place I can go. I can create an idea. I'm shepherded through my process of that idea. So I can move ahead. I can tick off my information. I'll tick off my checklist. I can provide more information as this idea progresses. If it's reviewed and approved, it can move across and automatically become a proposal. Now, to approve it, people are going to want to actually understand it. So we want to make sure it's associated. Look, it's just an idea right now. It's very fluffy, but is someone at least thinking about that strategic theme or that strategic goal? If that's all you do, remember, don't boil the ocean. It's maturity step by step. If all you do is say, look, we have 5 strategic goals in our organization. Please think about how your idea relates to one of those. Even if you don't score it at that point, at least you've made people think about it. That is actually a big step forward. And then you can make this more and more refined as you go. And then people rank it. So we now start getting kind of a sizing as to what this thing actually is. If you like the ideas, that's cool. Well, there are a few things you've got to think about. The first is that form, great form. It's a great process. How can you get to it? So you've got to make sure that there's a place you can go to, that people have a license to get to it. You've got to decide what's an idea versus a business case. Do we skip straight to a business case or must everything go through an idea first? When will these things get approved and who will actually approve them? So it's part of the process to think about. The tool becomes the easy part, remember. So as I said, think about who can create it, how they are going to get feedback. Do they have, for example, a Power App license if they need one? And where are they going to do it? Is there some sort of single place they can go? Do they come into Sensei IQ? Do you have a portal? What do you use to actually capture this information? You could use Sensei IQ that we've looked at to create them. Sensei IQ is built on, and I said I wouldn't give you a sales pitch, but just this is more of a principle. New Microsoft technology, everything is integrated. So don't just have a form that goes nowhere. Don't have an Excel that goes nowhere. Why not fill it into a form, receive an email to say, hey, person with a bright idea, I got the idea, thank you very much. Then let them know, maybe you update in Teams, write some, when you start looking at the idea and you move it forward in the process, send them an email, go and update it in Teams to say, hey people, you know that idea you gave us 3 months ago? It didn't go into the void. We're actually working on this. And then ultimately, yes or no, are you going to go ahead with the idea or not? Update Teams or give them a place to go to, a portal to go to they can get through in Teams so they can check the status of their idea and how it's actually progressing. So they feel loved. They don't feel that it just went into the void. All of this on the screen is trivial to create from a technology perspective because we just take advantage of what you've got. You've got this stuff already. 99% of the people on this call have the tooling to do this stuff. We just need to set it up for you. Okay, so that idea, we've told them, yay, we're going to do your idea. So we are going to move ahead. Let's think about what needs to be involved to move from the idea through into the proposal. So what we want to be able to do is flesh this idea out further. So at the moment, we know that it's an idea. Hey, you came up with it, it must be a good idea. You have associated it to a strategic theme to say, hey, look, there's some, on a high level, there's some purpose to doing this. We have rated it a little bit to see, is it, is it big, is it small, how much difficulty do you have a gut feel as to what it'll cost? What we want to do now is go down into more detail. We want to start seeing, as we go through the process, where those proposals are. Are they initiation? Are they being selected, prioritized? What do they cost? When do they start? When do they finish? What are our benefits? What is our return on these? So now it's becoming a bit more real, becoming a bit more evidence-based and a bit more serious in terms of how we select. And also it's more repeatable now. People who deliver the work love to see what's coming down the pipeline because they can start seeing, well, have we got a lot of big things on the go, but all these little things that he's finished, and maybe that's a good mix. So we can start to see just how much is coming down that pipe as we go along. So how do we get that data? Well, we go in and we create some proposals. So we could create it, but in this case, let it come over from the idea and automatically create that proposal for me. I don't want to double handle data. It has more elaborate information. We could start grouping it into a portfolio to say, okay, we're starting to think about how we're going to get from here to delivery. We are defining a business case around this, including what that return will actually be. So now we've got some evidence. And then, this is the important part, we start rating it. And by rating it, it gives us a priority. So now we're able to start saying, okay, this thing is a priority 12. We could force it in to say that, look, for compliance reasons, etc., we have to do this anyway, so we can bypass the priority. But now it's starting to become a bit more scientific. If you remember right in the beginning, when we looked at the strategy part, we start giving importance to these. So we are able to now work out where everything should actually fit in. It is associated back to that goal. So there needs to, again, there needs to be an overall point to it. And we have resourcing. So I've said for this one, we need a developer. Some of you who have seen our demos before may probably not have seen resourcing. Guess what? This is brand new, okay? So I've come in and said, well, I need a developer and I want that developer for 160 hours a month, which is about full time. They actually have a capacity of 165 hours a month. So what I've done is I have filled this in. I've just saved it. I haven't submitted it yet. I'm going to leave it like that for now. There is reporting that will show if this will, what that future demand actually is. So we start seeing what the demand in terms of work, in terms of resourcing, and in terms of cost actually is. They're all different puzzle pieces that make up what we're trying to do. By doing that, we start to now get a resource pipeline. So I can see, well, who's actually available based on our demand. Are we going to be able to do this work, but we haven't actually approved or selected this work yet? So it's still very much in that draft stage. Let's go and look at it and say, well, how does it look from a prioritization perspective? So remember, just filling it in, it prioritizes it for us. So here we've got our priority. So there we can see these ones up here. Actually, it's interesting. So this park benches in parks has a very high priority, low organizational impact, low risk, which is great, but extremely aligned with our strategy, medium effort. The return isn't great though, so it's kind of low. The one below it though, like this one, putting bins in the parks, that's a massive return. I think we should do that one. We're getting quite a, for the cost, we're getting a lot of bang for our buck over there. And we are still, low, but and extreme association. As we then approve this work to get done, so we follow the process through and we approve that work, we can start to see, are we doing enough to achieve our goals? And ultimately, this is what the question's all about. So here we can see that look at this. Okay, so for this goal of supporting and valuing teaching excellence, these are the proposals that have come in. So those of you who are doing this for a long term, like a 10-year or like a 5-year plan, or 1-year plan, or those of you doing it every financial year, it's okay, let's look at all these. They came through from ideas, they've been prioritized. We can actually see there's a priority. Let's look at this. I'm like, okay, well, based on those, we almost, but don't quite meet our target. So now we've got evidence. But let's look at these guys. This building a global alliance. We're smashing it. Like that's a lot. Do we need to reshuffle things, move a little bit of money over to the other side? So remember, right up front, I said it's about doing the right work and also making sure that it's spread appropriately over your strategic goals. So we start now getting this ability to, and you can see it's a very secure system. At times it will time out. Okay, so we get this ability to see, are we doing the right work and are we doing enough of the right work as we go forward? Okay, so this is giving us a combination of the vertical is how we got here in the first place, and we're now linking back up. Remember I said we've got the vertical and the horizontal. We are bringing the two together to see that, yes, you've had a way to get your idea, flesh it out in a proposal, prioritize it, keep it associated back up to the strategy, and you can now see if you're doing the right work, enough of it, and enough of that type of work for that goal, and you are doing it to the right priority. Okay, so yes, we like that prioritization. It is actually a very cool model. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to need a model. You're going to need people to agree on it, okay? We've built a very common model in here, and we've used a tool that makes it very, very easy to change that model. So if you've got a spreadsheet, people always bring a spreadsheet out, say, we built something here. I'm like, fine. If you can do it in a spreadsheet, it's Microsoft, we can do it in Power Apps, which is what we use very easily. It doesn't have to be enterprise-wide. Start it in a department, okay? Make sure you've then chosen a tool, you've got your process worked out, and then realize there will be clashes, there will be people disagreeing as to what these priorities are. There will be equal priorities. Those executives, remember that executive buy-in that you got earlier? Get them to make that call for you. This will be like a pressure release valve that will make your life a whole lot easier. Okay, some stories. So unfortunately, another client story, okay? So they want to have this whole online proposal thing. So and they're like, we've already got, Sensei IQ, let's use that. Okay, cool. Okay, let's start with Portfolio IQ and add your process. Like, well, we don't have a process yet, okay? But this is what we want one. And this is what we want people to do. And they give us all these spreadsheets. Like, well, you've got tons and tons of data. What are you going to do with it? Who's going to actually review it? Like, no, but what do you want to review it for? I just want to capture it. These lots of spreadsheets, put them in your tool. Okay, just store them in there. Like, okay, we can do that. But then what's the point? Who's going to report on it? Like, no, that's fine. We've got a Word document. You must still fill the Word document in. So you're asking me to put it in Sensei IQ and build a Word document because some manager only wants to approve a Word document. Yeah, well, maybe we should think about the people and how we don't want them to do two lots of work first, and then we can save them some time and get it all done within Sensei IQ. And other things that you've got to look out for. People will often do all of this. They will then complain and say that the reports are not giving them the data. So we'll say that, well, what's wrong with it? And they'll say that the status is never right. When we drill into it, it's because no one ever approves the workflow. And they don't do it because it's too complex and they lose all the emails. So remember, we said keep it simple to start with. Okay. Just going to go through these quickly. The prioritization scorecard that we use is a weighted average. Okay. Now, we do that and we are able to take on essentially any particular scorecard as we go. Now, I realize we are running out of time, so I'm going to jump to a last poll. Last one, and you can go and have lunch, I promise you. So if you decide, yes, we're going to do all of this, what's going to go wrong for you, do you think? Okay, so pretty much evenly spread between all of these things. Oh, politics, 30% politics. Yep, I did unfortunately actually expect that. And that's why we need to look out for politics, obviously, making sure there is strategic direction, making sure the whole process isn't too complex, and making sure that you don't spread it too wide, but you also don't do a little bit in too many areas. Okay, so better to go deep in one particular area to start with. Yep, so pretty much ending up politics 30%, not having a tool 20%. All the polls so far talking about a fifth of you not having the tool you need. That is interesting. Okay, so other things to look out for. Approvals, they can be manual. That's actually okay. Look out for emailing everyone all these approvals. You'll lose them, and don't try and boil the ocean as you go through all of this. Okay, that actually brings us to the end. I hope that this has left you a minute and a half for 2 minutes for questions. So Alice, maybe get you to read out any questions if there are any. And I hope it's given you some food for thought. Please contact us and we are more than happy to talk to you about practical ways of making this work.
Yep, we haven't had any questions come through.
Okay, that's cool. These people want their lunch. It is a Friday after all.
Oh, hang on, sorry, we do have one.
Yeah.
The priority ranking and weighted average, are they customizable?
Absolutely. So the thing with them is that if you can do it in Excel, we can do it here. So we've looked at various models as to how to do this. We have come up with some more likely to use models in terms of this, and we have built in the weighted scorecard. You can do two things. You could say, well, actually, I need one of the other models, or I need a model that's not on here. Or it's like, hey, yeah, weighted scorecard is fine, but I've already got one in an Excel. Please make it look like mine. Think of it like this. You've got all those formulas in Excel. We just stick them into our tool. They're both Microsoft tools. They're both built to be configured. That's the reason we've used Power Apps to do it, because yes, it's very easy to configure that for you.
Yeah, I think it's super important that we outline it really is the business process and the value required in order to determine what that is. And we then just apply that business processes and digitalize it on the platform.
Yeah, so that voice you've just heard there is Mark Sister. He actually built all of this prioritization stuff you've just been seeing in there. So I basically get to present it and look good. He does all the work. It's lovely.
Yeah, not quite.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, thank you all very much. I hope you have a great weekend. I know that pretty much everyone is under lockdown. Look, hang in there. It'll be over soon, I hope.
Thank you, Ryan.
Very
Awesome
much.
presentation. Well done.
Okay, bye.
See ya.
Thanks, Ryan.